Hi, I'm Nancy Durrant and I'm the arts editor at the Evening Standard. I'm delighted to be joined today by photographer and cultural commentator Misan Harriman. When the Black Lives Matter protests began in London last summer, one photographer with his intimate black and white reportage style captured the mood of the unfolding events like no other. Born in Nigeria but raised in the UK, where he developed a lifelong love of the arts from an early age, Misan Harriman's work behind the camera, inspired by photographers including Gordon Parks and Eve Arnold, is entirely self-taught. Last year, he became the first black man to shoot the cover of British Vogue in the magazine's 105-year history, and his images of protests, from Black Lives Matter to recent marches against street harassment, have repeatedly gone viral around the world. He also has a long list of celebrity subjects, including Tom Cruise, Marcus Rashford and Cate Blanchett. And when the Duke and Duchess of Sussex announced their pregnancy news to the world on Valentine's Day, Misan was the man chosen to capture the couple in beautiful black and white photograph, taken using an iPad at their home in California. All this, despite only starting his photography career just 3 years ago, at the age of 40. Alongside his work, Misan is also an outspoken activist, mental health campaigner, and founder of What We See, an online cultural hub that works to amplify a diverse range of inspirational and uplifting stories. Misan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, it's been one hell of a past 12 months, hasn't it? I mean, for the world and for you personally. Can I just have some of your reflections on that period?
It's been hard to process. I had my second daughter, 2 weeks into the first proper lockdown. I had to deal with so many open wounds that I didn't even know I had, that they kind of climbed out of me off the back of the murder of George Floyd, but really the repercussions of that, when you see so many people that look like yourself, like myself, finally accepting that they're not okay. It's been challenging, but absolutely necessary for me to look inward and tell a story outward with my lens.
And many people will know you, or at least know your work, through your photographs of the Black Lives Matter protests. How was it then being in the thick of the protests on the ground? You must have to separate almost the photographer from the man in that context.
Usually you do, right? So if I have a gig with a magazine or a brand, I can do that. But this time, it was different. I was almost in a trance. I was shooting, if you like, my own trauma. I was shooting the echoes of the memories of so many men and women who the construct of the society they were born into had destroyed them. So my camera was directly connected to my soul over those 6 months. And sometimes I tell my wife, I don't even remember taking some of these images.
Wow.
It was otherworldly, truly.
So you mostly, presumably, when you're in any situation as a photographer, you're just kind of running about trying to get the shot. That's not how it
No, and there's
felt.
also a different level of trust. Some of the protesters would see me and begin to know who I was and what I was trying to do, which was tell the truth.
Yeah.
I always say this was me trying to be a custodian of truth and showing the beating heart of London, the London that I know and love. People were giving me a little bit more of themselves than I think they normally would, even in a highly emotional, highly charged situation, because they knew that I would take that pain, take that hope, and do right by it with the images that I share with the world.
Are there any particular moments that you can recall that have really stayed with you from that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an image, and I've spoken quite openly about this. I call it the image of broke me. And it was 4 a.m. and it was on Parliament Square. And there was a sea of people, all, with their fists in the air in solidarity. But in the middle, there was a boy, a youngish man, I guess, in his wheelchair, He had special needs. And a woman who I presume was his mother, holding his hand in tears. And I thought, if this boy, this young man, with all the problems he has anyway in his daily life, felt that he had to be there, then I now know what the meaning of hope is.
God, that must have been such a
I just started weeping. I was literally, looking. I was to my iPad actually. I was looking at the iPad, and I just, there's the sort of tears where your emotional engine prepares you for them. These weren't those ones. I just started leaking.
Okay.
But it was there also, I think it was my soul leaking. There's a sense of, oh my God, yes, there is hope in humanity. There truly is. When you see people like that have no good reason to care about your plight, and they do more than even themselves, it's extraordinary to see.
Had you been feeling, up until that point, in response to the murder of George Floyd, that there wasn't?
I think a lot of black men and women, when George Floyd happened, and we watched those 8+ minutes of a man's life being taken, we were deflated to the point of not knowing what to think. I remember looking to my wife and I said, I don't have any more tears. I don't know what to do. And as she always does, Camilla, she looks at me and she goes, look to your camera. Look to your camera. And I got on the train with the camera and headed off to Hyde Park initially on the first day that I went, not knowing whether I'd see 5 people or 5,000. And little did I know then that my life would be changed forever.
Speaking of which, your photograph of the sports star Darcy Born protesting outside the US Embassy went viral. And that's become one of the most shared civil rights images of all time.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about how that
Yeah,
shot
and Darcy
happened?
is, to me, truly, she's to me a sister now. She's a little sister, and her parents have become dear friends. And it goes to show what you can do when you think you can't do much. And Darcy is a world-class field hockey player, and after leaving Wellington College, she's now playing at Duke, in the US, one of life's overachievers. I'm so proud of her. And she almost didn't go. If you look at the image, you can see the paint still drying on the words that she had written. But she felt she had to. And this is in 9 Elms Lane outside the US Embassy. And I saw her, and the sign really just struck a chord. And I politely begged her to take the image, and she stood very proudly holding this image. And this is a young woman who didn't have many friends that was coming with her that day, and she said, this sign is what I feel, and I'm going to go out and just stand and show that I care. This pool of empathy that people don't realize can change everything. It was posted on Instagram, and within 48 hours, the son of Martin Luther King himself had used the image to make a big statement on race relations.
I mean, come on.
And, but I'm in Surrey, and Darcy, we do not know the Martin Luther King family. And for them to use, this combination of Darcy's sense of purpose and me being there to capture her, this poetry of light, is a reminder to all that our voice does matter, always.
Did you have any inkling that it would have that such a... No, all right.
No, come on. No, Martin, sure, let's do that. I'll try that on Thursday.
Fair enough.
No, I would say, and it wasn't just Martin, it was everyone. I mean, lots of very, very famous people use that image to make a statement. And you are right. If not the most, it's amongst the most shared civil rights images, or any image, really, over the last year. But it asks the question, why is racism still a debate? And I think that question is very jarring to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And the reason signs are very important, and this is a point that I love to make, is that when you look at a picture that's holding a sign, you read it in your own voice. And that hits home in a very different way to just seeing people at protest.
Yeah, of course. You've also photographed, I think, Extinction Rebellion protest, marches against Trump, and earlier this month, the
97
protests against street harassment, for which thanks very much. Why are you particularly drawn to capturing protests?
I'm drawn to amplifying voices that need to be heard. And if my platform is one where people are looking at the work that I'm doing, then the rights of women, the rights of disabled people, the fact that in general London was not particularly happy having Donald Trump anywhere near this great capital. These are things that I'm very happy to document. And also human beings have a funny way of forgetting, especially when we showcase how good we can be as one. And fighting for our climate, women's rights, race relations, not necessarily being a fan of the former President of the United States of America. These are all parts of our collective history that I felt it was important to document, but document it in a very visceral manner where people's emotional engines will be turned on either way.
Yeah. I suppose, to be fair, also, there hasn't been that much to shoot other than protests in the last year.
Well, that's the other thing. I was like, there's been a lot going on. And I guess I picked up the camera just at the right time because, the world literally went upside down. And there was just an embarrassment of riches, if you like, from a photographer and photojournalist point of view, and I had to be there.
Of course. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about change and the process of change and the pace of change. As we mentioned before, you became the first black man to photograph the cover of British Vogue in the magazine's 105-year history last year, which is an incredible first. It's also incredible in a different way that it took 105 opportunities for that to happen. And you said, I think it was in a podcast, whether I like it or not, I have become an activist in Britain, spoken vigorously about the importance of diversity and inclusion in the arts. So I want to ask you now, at this moment, when the arts have a chance to start again, turn over a new leaf, really start afresh, what change do you want to see after this year?
Culture and art are the only thing, I believe, that Homo sapiens can do that set us apart from the rest of the natural world. It is our magic. You can listen to a song, look at a painting, read a book, and you cannot defend yourself against how it reaches into your inner self. And with the mental health ramifications of the last 18 or so months that we have all been through, this is the only time in modern history where everyone, since war, has been through something that is incredibly traumatic. And art and culture has and must become the tonic for the nation. So the stakes are higher than it's ever been. It isn't just something you do because you have a nice dinner and enjoy the theatre. We need this. This is a medicine for the soul that can help us know that, things are a little bit strange, but we can look toward the horizon together. So the cultural institutions need to reset and have their doors open in a way that's never been done before. And make sure that curatorially, people feel that their stories are being told. The combination of accessibility and diversity and inclusivity in all its forms within the cultural programming is where I believe the future of the arts of the UK should head.
Yeah. And what about London specifically? How do you think, as a city, we can become how can it become a more inclusive, nurturing place for that diversity in the arts?
It's walking a mile in shoes that aren't yours. The gatekeepers that have been controlling how London decides who watches what, how things are priced, how people feel when they walk into an institution. There's so many things people like me and you may take for granted. We can just stroll into the V&A. There are people that may not even feel comfortable. They may think, this isn't right for me. So we have work to do at every level, and make sure that, from schools through university, and of course, people that don't have the socioeconomic wallet to be able to experience every aspect of what London offers. I think this is the greatest, in terms of artistic presence, there's nothing like London. But how many people are enjoying that is the question. And I don't think the answer is something we should be that proud of. The offering's extraordinary, but who's receiving the offering needs to be changed immediately.
You've talked a lot about encouraging others and giving a helping hand. I'm thinking especially of when you took the young filmmaker Cornelius Walker to the British Fashion Awards as your assistant, just so that he could meet kind of big and interesting people, and you introduced him to Tom Cruise, which is pretty cool. Could you talk a bit about where that urge comes from to kind of give other people a leg up?
As you climb, you lift. As you climb, you lift. And I know what it feels like to watch from afar and have people not recognize my light. And when you come across Cornelius Walkers of this world, somebody on his first rodeo, he got nominated for an Oscar.
That's ridiculous.
I don't think it's, I wasn't really, taking a huge risk. but even that kind of talent, I call it death by a thousand cuts. I will not allow that young man to have a system make him believe that he is not worthy of being within the film industry. So for him to come with me to the Royal Albert Hall and meet the icons of fashion and film, and I always said to him, I said, remember, they're lucky to have you in this room, sir. And I have to applaud Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise spent half an hour talking to this man, and he did the thing. He said, look, congratulations, and I hope one day we work together. It's an amazing thing to see.
It's pretty cool.
And that is about being led into a room that Edward Enninful led me into when I shot the cover of Vogue. And I've realized, once I got into this room, that it's got a lot of real estate. It's got high ceilings. There are lots of other rooms within this room. So I immediately, just like Edward did, just put my foot right there before it closed.
Yeah.
And I will be ushering as many people from all walks of life, from all races, who, if merit was all you needed, you would already know.
Yeah. Guess you've photographed some massive names. You've just mentioned one of them. Do you have any favourite portrait subjects?
One that's deeply personal to me is Terry O'Neill. I absolutely love his style of photography. He was a man that wasn't particularly keen on augmenting anything, digitally or Photoshop, and he kind of had an intimacy with his subjects, like, Frank Sinatra, his wife Faye Dunaway, the infamous Oscar image that he took, that I hope that I can somehow replicate. And for him to ask for me to photograph him in the final year of his life is an honor that I will never forget. And then his family used that image, to announce his passing, which, again, just fills me with a responsibility to try and carry on the sort of visual poetry he did with my lens as well.
That's wonderful. Can we talk a little bit about your Vogue cover with Marcus Rashford and Adjoa Aboa? What was that experience like?
Again, utterly life-changing. But I remember having the Zoom call from my lovely friends at British Vogue, and Edward, in his ever humble manner, just casually, offered me one of the most historic fashion covers of all time. And I had never shot any cover for anything. And my first one would be the September issue of British Vogue in the biggest, tumultuous year that we've all had. And I remember getting off the Zoom. I focused on not collapsing during the Zoom, and when I got off it, my wife said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. But I really had a huge panic attack. I suffer, like many of us, from imposter syndrome, and I really thought I did not deserve this. But I've learnt that it is in the depths of despair, in the depths of self-doubt, that there's a slither of hope that usually pulls you out. And I found that slither and realized that I had to do right by telling the extraordinary story of Marcus Rashford and what he's done for school children, and Adwoa Aboah, what she's always doing for women that doubt themselves. And I was a small part to play in this symphony of activism that was orchestrated by Edward Enninful.
It was incredibly cool.
I'll take it.
Obviously, lots of people saw that. Gazillions of people will have seen your beautiful shot when the Duke and Duchess of Sussex invited you to shoot their pregnancy announcement. How were they to photograph?
I think, when you're photographing love and fortitude and new life, it's a privilege and an honor. And for me, I had very little work to do. I've always said I capture the truth. And what you see there of those two people celebrating love and fortitude is the absolute truth.
It's such a beautiful picture. Can you talk? I mean, you did it from home, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, COVID doesn't allow much traveling to go on. So like many photographers, we've had to find ways to virtually be there. So there are a few apps that allow you to take over phones and iPads, and I virtually, and you can still hear my voice, and it still somehow feels natural. And I did it from thousands of miles away, and it still kind of worked out.
It felt so fresh. It has got quite a sort of a beautiful, casual, outdoor, barefoot vibe. Like, how can you talk to us a bit about the inspiration of the shot itself?
The inspiration, quite simply, is our subjects that are happy and comfortable within themselves. Nothing more, nothing less. Truly, when you are together and happy in that togetherness, there is something that comes through in the lens that I just hope for in every image that I take. And I think that's why people were so moved by it, because that was, in spades coming through. And I'm very proud and happy to have had the opportunity to do that for them. And you share a passion with them, I know, which is campaigning for mental health. I know you have a particular interest in neurodiversity because you're dyslexic, aren't you? Yeah, I'm dyslexic, and I'm sure a few other things. I pretty much failed every exam I ever took. Right. And in the 80s, I think many of the educational systems weren't overly understanding of the fact that some people's brains are wired differently. So it's hugely important for me to be a living, breathing example of what it means to be different and how one processes things. I'm a visual learner, and to all the men and women that are listening to this, it's okay to take the road less traveled in how you learn. I teach myself usually, through videos, audio. It really, really helps me. And I just want to have as much money raised or as many schooling systems to recognize that there are children out there that may be similar to me, that need a little bit extra attention, or just changing the curriculum or how they are looked at, because their minds are different. We are perfectly imperfect, all of us, and I think that needs to be accepted and celebrated, and also looked after a little bit more by the people that are nurturing us as we grow in our formative years. Yeah.
How important is it, do you think, to have people like you, people like the Sussexes, visibly talking about those vulnerabilities? Perhaps that's not the right word, but
Well,
about mental health?
You know, I think it's mental health and people being open about. I think everyone has some form of, your mind is a muscle, and every now and again it gets a little tired. And it is crucial for people that are perceived to be at the top of any industry, to perceive to be successful, to let the world know, and I'm speaking for myself here, that I feel incredibly vulnerable most of the time, and I use that as my superpower. A big part of, again, what makes us special as human beings is our emotional engine isn't something that has been created by an algorithm. It's fluid, and we should bathe in that fluidity. That's what makes us special. I was just in the Avenues Youth Centre in Queen's Park with some extraordinary young men and women, and the first thing I told them is that I am a university dropout, and look where I am now. In this age of Instagram, this aspirational perfection, whether it's how we look or how we got to where we've got to, is not healthy for 2 or 3 generations that are having things very, very hard. It's time for us to recognize that vulnerability is something we all have to deal with, and we should do it together, not alone, for God's sake, not alone.
And how do you think the arts can be used to support people who are struggling now, especially of all times? Because
again, with arts, it goes beyond all race and class barriers, right? It's something that you can decide for yourself what it means to you, but it always means something to you. So you can reach young, vulnerable minds in a way that is completely unique with music, with spoken word, with dance, with theatre. So let's weaponize that and lift people's spirits, and also give them a sense of, this is what the world can be for me too, not just the people I see as I take the bus every day who seem to be living in an echo chamber of privilege.
Misan, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute joy talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.